Wouldn't it be amazing if you could come up with a great title for your book every single time? Well, in this video, I'm going to help you do exactly that. What's up, guys? Dave Jacobson here, best-selling author and book publisher, and in today's video, we're going to talk all about titles. First, we're going to talk about why titles are even important. Then we're going to take a look at some of the key features involved in all great titles, and we're even going to look at some of the common features in some of the most popular titles of all time. So if that sounds good, pull up a chair, maybe a bowl of popcorn, and let's get into the video. I'm going to shrink my melon-sized head here, and we're going to get right into it. So as you can see here, I created a Word document so you can follow along easily at home, and we're just going to go through this together. So first, let's talk about why a title is even important, right? Do you really even need a good title? And the answer is yes. Your title is the first thing potential customers will see regarding your work, right? It's the first point of either acceptance or rejection of your work. So it's critically important that you get this right. Guys, if people pick up a book and they don't like the title, they're never going to read the blurb on the back of the book. They're never going to open up and read your amazing opening line. They're just going to reject the book. So make sure you really take the time to study title and come up with a great title for your book. And we're going to get into how you can do that in just a minute. The next reason your title is critically important is your title is actually a very powerful marketing tool, guys. I know a lot of authors don't want to think about marketing at all, but unfortunately, in the year 2025, you have to become a good marketer if you want to succeed as an author. So, what do I mean by that? Well, first of all, it's a potential click magnet. So if we're talking about online book sales, guys, think about what a title can do. It can stop the scroll, right? People have attention deficit disorder, most people these days. And so you really have to grab their attention. And if you know, whether they're scrolling on Amazon through the books or on Google or what have you, if you have a powerful title that stands out among the crowd, you can draw readers in, right? Or let's say you're at the bookstore. Same deal, guys. If they're walking by and there's thousands of books in front of them, why are they going to pick up your book instead of another book? Well, again, it comes down to the title. The title has to grab their attention, right? So becoming great at coming up with titles is a very important skill that's going to serve you well as an author. Another reason your title is a very powerful marketing tool is it can be powerful in algorithms to convey relevance to search engines. Guys, whether we like it or not, search engines rule commerce these days. They rule the world in many cases, right? So having the right keywords to tell the search engine what your book is about is becoming increasingly important, right? So, and why is that important? Well, the search engines can only serve your book to the right customer at the right time if they know what your book is about, right? So getting the title right is important. Okay, so we've talked about why book titles are important. I suspect you already knew some of this stuff, guys, but now let's get into what are some of the key elements that make a title good, right? And first we're going to talk about high concept books, then we're going to talk about all titles in general, including commercial and literary, right? But for high concept books, your title, in order to be a good one, has to be unique, fresh, unusual, or unexpected in some way, right? It has to stick in your head or grab your attention in some way, right? So I provided some examples here. The Catcher in the Rye, it's quirky, right? It's instantly recognizable, it's memorable, it's different, and it's unexpected, right? And that helps contribute to its memorability. Also, Where the Crawdads Sing, right, by Delia Owens. It's lyrical and it's unusual in that way, right? So again, it's unique, it's fresh, it's original, and it's in some cases unexpected. Okay, it also has to have universal appeal, ideally. This is if you're going for high concept books, guys. I'm going to do a whole video on what high concept means at a later date. But basically, these are the books that sell really well, right? Universal appeal. So it has to, if you're selling a book like How to Sew Sweaters, that's great, but it's not going to have universal appeal because there's a small target audience. Not everybody and their mom wants to run out and buy a book on How to Sew Sweaters, right? So if you're going for those high concept books, it has to relate to a universal audience, right? And it has to relate to them or be fascinating to a broad audience. All right, what else does a great high concept book need? Well, it should also be unique, fresh, unusual, or unexpected, even if it's a high concept book, but it will also appeal to your target audience based on their interests, right? I said, oh, sorry, this is for not high concept books. So even if you're in literary, right, if you're like, you're not really necessarily a commercial author, you still have to do these things, right? You still have to capture your target audience's preferences in your title. Okay, moving on to the next one. Your title should immediately grab a reader's attention and demand to be noticed, right? And here are some ways that you can do that. You can have a clever title, right? Maybe consider using puns. The Nightmare Before Christmas, right? That's a clever title because it's a spin on a classic phrase that everyone's familiar with. Something that's buzzworthy, right? A title that's buzzworthy or controversial potentially, right? Or gossip worthy or interesting in some other way, right? Something that's going to grab the reader's attention, right? Check out the video I just did, guys, on how to come up with a great opening line for your book. We talk about the importance of capturing a reader's attention. We talk about the importance of hooks, right? Okay, so moving on to the next point. Your title should also include high volume, low competition keywords related to your book. Okay, so this is more of a modern thing, right? When J.D. Salinger was writing his book, there was no such thing as algorithms and search engines, right? So he didn't have to think about this. But unfortunately, today, you do need to think about this. If you can choose one keyword to get in your book, and it might just be the word mermaid, for example. If your book's about mermaids, making sure you have the word mermaid in your title rather than just calling your book like Lola, which happens to be the name of your mermaid or something. It's going to be a lot easier for people to discover your book and purchase it. And it's going to be easier for search engines to identify your target audience. Okay? So now let's get into some other noteworthy qualities you might consider for your title. So we talked about some of the most important ones. The ones we just went through are the absolute mission critical qualities. But now let's talk about some other common qualities that you might find among popular works, right? So these are kind of like, if you will, what have become customary things that literary audiences find appealing in books, right? So titles that are memorable and catchy. A good title sticks in your head. Again, we talked about The Catcher in the Rye and Where the Crawdads Sing. Let's also talk about the next one, which is titles that are evocative of mood, setting, or theme, right? Think about Wuthering Heights, guys. So the word wuthering already creates this idea of atmosphere, a stormy sort of gothic field, right? The Ocean at the End of the Lane by Neil Gaiman, right? That's sort of a mysterious, almost magical sounding title, right? So it's evoking the mood of the story, right? Let's move on to the next. So this, again, we're talking about noteworthy qualities you might consider incorporating into your novel. These aren't game changers, but these can really help you in thinking about and framing how you're coming up with your next title. Titles that are tied to the protagonist or central character, right? Examples include Jane Eyre or The Brief Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde, right? Or A Prayer for Owen Meany, right? Putting your protagonist, or Harry Potter, right? Putting your protagonist front and center is another great strategy that's common among popular books. Okay, let's move on to the next strategy. Titles that play with familiar phrases or cultural references, right? So Good Omens is obviously a riff or play on Bad Omens, right? By Neil Gaiman. Something Wicked This Way Comes, right? I love that title. Something about it is just sends goosebumps up my spine, and it's lifted from Shakespeare, right? So it's instantly eerie, but it's also playing on a popular cultural reference. So when it was written, people would have been familiar with that phrase from Shakespeare. Okay, titles that hint at conflict or mystery. suggest something unresolved that will pull the reader in. So Gone Girl, for example, right? It's short, it's concise. What happened to the girl? Why is she gone? What does it mean that she's gone, right? The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, another one, hints at conflict or mystery, and it's intriguing and unusual, right? That hooks you in immediately, right? Great title. Titles that are concise and powerful, like Dune, right? One of the most popular fantasy book series of all time, or Beloved by Toni Morrison, right? Those are just concise and to the point, and their conciseness really kind of draws you in. It's interesting and stark. Titles that are whimsical or humorous, right? A series of unfortunate events, or The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right? These are more to be used for like middle grade fiction or lighter fiction or humorous works, but something you can definitely consider incorporating into your next book. Also, titles that are symbolic or metaphorical, right? So the title might resonate on a deeper level, like To Kill a Mockingbird, for example, or The House of the Spirits, right? Both literal spirits and figurative. Family legacy is hinted at, right? So guys, if you got value out of this video, that is our video on titles. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, and I will see you next time.